Today on Typical Books, we're talking about 18 new books coming out for March. Quite a few of them are from Horror Writers Association authors as well. So yes, last we spoke, I was reading quite a few books. I'm going to pick two to start out with really quick before we get to the new books from the backwards bookshelf, because I'm still reading Pressure by Jeff Strand. It's fantastic. I'm loving this book so much. If you are a Richard Lehman fan and want another author and have never checked out Jeff Strand like I hadn't, this is really great. I know he writes some more comedic stuff, and there is a bit of like dark comedy in this, but it's in line with Richard Lehman. So yeah, absolutely loving this. I had already read the Mr. Ballen book, so I'm out of backwards books. So let me grab two. I'm just grabbing the two that were on the end. And what have we got? Skull Daddy. I picked this up around Halloween. It's a local author. I've seen this author talk at CanCon as well. I don't know what to expect from it. It's a novella, very short, so I'm lucky that way. And oh, more Canadiana, Nathan Ballingred, North American Lake Monsters. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time, so we'll talk about those coming up soon on the show. Two short novellas, so that's good. It goes well with having just read Northern Nights, so I like going into Nathan Ballingred stuff and more Canadiana that way. And I'm also finishing reading a larger book, a normal novel, and Eric LaRocca's At Dark I Become Loathsome, so that's going to be the beginning of my March, right? So yes. So without further ado, we have coming up on March 1st, Who Put Bella in the Wych Elm? And I absolutely love this cover. It's like a charcoal drawing of an elm, a tree, but it's got this text on top of it that is sort of like a red script for the name Bella, and Who Put in the Wych Elm is like this kind of toggled size, chunky serifed font. It's really good. It looks very storybookish. It's based on a true crime story that unfolded in around 1943, where they found the skeleton of a girl in a wych elm, a type of elm, and this cover has that beautiful crook or hollow in the tree with a skeleton in it. It's just beautiful, a beautiful cover. When Dr. Emma Lloyd relocates to the quaint English parish of Hagsley, she hopes to find her painful past behind her and reinvent herself as a forensic investigator. But her fresh start takes a sinister twist when she's drawn to the parish's most infamous cold case, the mysterious 80-year-old murder of Jane Doe, found discarded in the tree's hollow, a woman that locals have come to know as Bella. As Emma digs deeper and secrets come to light, she faces unexpected resistance from her superiors and Bella herself. Haunted by Bella's vengeful ghost, Emma begins to suspect the case is far more dangerous and personal than she ever imagined. So I am looking forward to this. I think I may pick this up. Maybe not in March, maybe because I've got a lot of reading to do already, but soon, someday soon. There's going to be quite a few books on this list, as usual, that I want to scoop up right away. The Divine Flesh by Drew Huff. I love this cover. It's got this bubble gum pink on black. It's mostly pink. It's an image of a heart made of mouths, several mouths with teeth, screaming mouths, and they're full of white teeth surrounded by these tentacle-like arteries. The font is like kind of what I'd call bootleg serif, kind of a 70s Western porno vibe to the font. It's really cool looking, and this reminds me already of Eva Harm's Transmuted, even though it's probably very different. Just I have the same sort of feel from looking at this cover. Jennifer Plummer and the Divine Flesh have exactly three things in common. They're trapped inside Jennifer's body, for one. 2, they despise each other. And 3, they're in love with Daryl Plummer, Jennifer's ex-husband. But when Jennifer takes an experimental Rundo drug to free herself from the Divine Flesh's control, it only makes things worse. Expelled from Jennifer's body, the Divine Flesh can now love anyone in existence to death. But time's running out. It's somehow up to Jennifer and Daryl to save the universe from complete and total destruction. Can a dysfunctional drug mule and electrician from rural Idaho stop the cosmic abomination before it's too late? Jennifer thinks maybe. Just maybe. I love this premise. I love this cover. This sounds crazy. If you've read this, let me know, because whoa. March 4th, we have the Aris Ridge Trail by Larry Hinkle. And we're kind of batting 1,000 or whatever the saying is. I don't follow sports. I loathe sports, but I fucking love this cover. This reminds me of Mastodon by Steve Stredd, the end of that Cloverfield Lane film, the creature features of The Mist or Troll Hunter. It's got this gargantuan creature. The twist is that it has two dogs overlooking the cornfield where this titan roams across the landscape. Not a person in sight. It's got condensed text, a great font choice. It's perfection. So yes, you won't find the Ayres Ridge Trail on any map. You won't find the people who go missing on it either. The Ayres Ridge Trail has no beginning, no end. It runs forever. Connecting realities across space and time, 4 travelers find themselves lost on this trail. A novice reporter who learns that some shortcuts are anything but, a grieving author who's reunited with his dead dog in the tunnels beneath the haunted hotel, a young man who tries a new rideshare app that abandons him in the space between Nebraska and Colorado, a seasoned hiker and his aging dog who discover the remains of a 6-legged rodent near the sign for a trail that they've never heard of. Disoriented by an ever-changing landscape, haunted by otherworldly predators, I guess like the thing we see on the cover, man, it looks so cool. Can they work together long enough to find their way home, or will they fall prey to the cosmic beast that guards the trail? I love this. As I spoke about previously, how I really like the Mr. Ballen stories. One of the things I like about those stories is when he does the missing 411, I guess they call it. It's based on another man's writings of following hikers. Now, with all of the upset in the governmental jobs south of the border from here, there may be more people going missing in our state parks or your state parks. We have provincial parks here in Canada, not state parks, but we don't seem to have the same problem that the United States has with people going missing all of the time in their vast state parks when we have millions and billions of totally empty landscape here and not as many people go missing. It's just so weird to me. So it becomes like this creepy kind of conspiracy theory that something's going on in the state parks, and this book will only feed that fear. So also on March 4th, we have The Unworthy, a novel by Agustina Basterrica. I know it seems a lot of people are really waiting for this. I've seen some reviews already, mixed, just like her previous work. And of course it is translated, so people muse that maybe there's something lost in translation. I don't think so. There's a lot of really hard work done, especially when there's all eyes on an author like this. The cover is very plain. It's black with red and white text, sort of in a circle around this nun who is sort of giving thanks to the heavens or something. Very plain, very brutalist, very Basterrica kind of cover, kind of what you'd expect so far. From her cell in a mysterious convent, a woman writes the story of her life in whatever she can find, discarded ink, dirt, and even her own blood. A lower member of the sacred sisterhood, deemed an unworthy, she dreams of ascending to the ranks of the enlightened at the center of the convent and the pleasing of the foreboding superior sister. Outside, the world is plagued by catastrophe. Cities are submerged underwater, electricity and the internet are non-existent, the bands of survivors fight and forage in a cruel, barren landscape. Inside, the narrator is controlled, punished, but safe. But when a stranger makes her way past the convent walls, joining the ranks of the unworthy, she forces the narrator to consider the long-buried past and what she may be overlooking about the enlightened. As the two women grow closer, the narrator is increasingly haunted by questions about her own past, the environmental future, and her present life inside the convent. How did she get to sacred sisterhood? Why can't she remember her life before? And what really happens when a woman is chosen as one of the enlightened? Okay, this gets creepier as it goes. I like this description quite a lot, and it reminds me a little of the rumor mill surrounding the monastery of precious blood that was near where I grew up, and everyone thought that this was what was going on at the Precious Blood Monastery. They are kind of culty, I will say. The Precious Blood Monastery was very culty. March 11th, How to Survive a Slasher by Justine Pasella Winans, and this comes out March 11th. It has this 4-color kind of comic book looking teens running at a Dutch tilt away from a werewolf masked killer with a great big knife. Interesting to a certain demographic. CJ has survived the horror movie that is her life by following one rule: blend in and stay out of it. That sounds really great advice. But it's hard to do when your trauma gets turned into a best-selling book series. The Slasherville books are a true crime phenomenon documenting the Wolfman massacres that changed CJ's life forever. CJ hates everything about the books and their fans, but at this point, she's just grateful there aren't any more murders to write about. Or are they? Until one day, when an unpublished Slasherville book shows up on her doorstep, predicting new Wolfman killings. CJ is sure it's a bad prank, but the events in this book are starting to come true, and when CJ breaks her one rule, the final girl person who, according to the book, is supposed to stop the Wolfman ends up dead. Suddenly, blending in and staying out of it is not an option, and CJ will have to use everything she knows about the rules of horror to make it out alive. I really love the premise of this. From what I understand, it's YA, and I've kind of sworn off a lot of YA. Maybe I'll read this someday. It sounds really cool. March 11th, Vanishing Daughters, a thriller by Cynthia Pelayo, and it features this overgrown ivy on the cover with this dimly candlelit window, very small in the center, and through which we can see the silhouette of a woman. Very plain, very lush, very secretive. It started the night journalist Briar Thorne's mother died in their rambling old mansion on Chicago's South Side. The nightmares of a woman in white pleading to come home, music switched on in locked rooms, and the panicked fear of being swallowed by the dark. Bree has almost convinced herself that the stirrings of dread are simply manifestations of grief and not the beyond world of ghostly impossibilities that her mother believed in, and more tangible terrors still lurk outside the decaying Victorian greystone. Okay, so lovers of urban gothic delight. I think this will be really fun. I've been looking forward to something really dark from Cynthia Pelayo, and I think that this will be it. March 15th, Memento Mori, 13 Tales of Horror by Kayla Frederick. And I like this cover, dark blue on black with a raven perched in the foreground and a dark farmhouse on the back. What more could you want? Stylized, serif, creepy, toggle-sized text. That's what I like it. Death can come for anyone at any time, and there's no escaping it. There are millions of ways to die, not all of them expected. What starts as a peaceful day can end up the worst possible way. So brace yourself for the inevitable. Memento Mori contains 13 stories filled with curses, monsters, deteriorating minds that will leave you with the reminder that someday you too shall die. And this is a single author collection. It includes stories like A Concert to Die For. A struggling musician finally gets the opportunity he's dreamed of, but how many times and how many lives will he be willing to trade for it? Dolls. After an incident at a high school reunion, voodoo dolls start appearing around town. Wherever they go, tragedy follows. Footsteps. When a medium learns the truth about her powers, she meets the biggest challenge yet in an entity that gets its powers from hunting psychics. I like the premise of that. And Stockholm Syndrome. Vera wakes in an experimental facility with no memory of who she is or how she got there. I don't know if she remembers her name. That's an interesting twist already. But there's 13 stories in this collection. Looks really good. March 15th. The Organization is here to support you by Charlene Elsby. It's got a very neat and corporate Helvetica heavy black text on blue. This cover features a blue sky with head office floating on a giant boulder. It's oddly soothing. Welcome to the Organization. Employees of the organization contribute to its mission to apply non-traditional methods to the non-traditional problems of today. To ensure that all employees... I wish that I had this memorized and could read this like a stewardess or something. To ensure that all employees have the same opportunity to thrive, the organization's state-of-the-art live and work facility has all the comforts of home, plus technology that maximizes their opportunities for collaboration. Without the organization, Clarissa Knowles would have nowhere else to go. That is, unless she can make it to Dick's house, the professor that she's been talking to online. Haunted by her failed relationship with Maurice, the existentialist, and the deaths of her parents, can Clarissa shake off the values of the organization, pack up her cat, and go? I have a feeling the organization will not let her do that. But yeah, it's an interesting looking book. I think it comes from Weird Punk or Perpetual Motion Machine or something. Ghoulish Publications. It comes from one of those small presses. But yeah, interesting stuff if you're looking for something weird. March 18th, we have The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. A lot of people looking forward to this. The cover features the head of a buffalo on a side profile, and it's just really unremarkable. It's on beige. The text is red, this sort of corroded Western-looking font with a marker font that kind of looks not unlike lipstick if you wrote the word hunter in lipstick. It's interesting. It's just not super interesting looking to me, and I think I hold it to the high esteem of past Stephen Graham Jones covers. The Only Good Indians had a beautiful cover when it debuted. A diary written in 1912 by a Lutheran pastor is discovered within a wall. What it unveils is a slow massacre, a chain of events that go back to 217 Blackfeet dead in the snow, told in transcribed interviews by Blackfeet named Goodstab, who shares the narrative of his peculiar life over a series of confessional visits. This is an American Indian revenge story written by one of the new masters of horror, Stephen Graham Jones. Boring ass cover aside, I'm very interested to read this book. I know it's really done the rounds of review copies. If you've read it, let me know what you thought. The Haunting of Room 904. I love this photographic cover. It has a white door. It's slightly ajar. There's a woman's hand just coming around the edge of the door, either to close it further or open it for you. It's a mystery already, so I think that's kind of cool. The shadows of vertical blinds fall across the door, and the text is printed on the door. It's mainly this white bowed serif font, boring kind of font, stately, impactful. It's lovely in its simplicity. And I think it's a photograph. I have to look very, very closely. I don't have my glasses on, but yeah, I could photograph this on this white door right here. Like, it is so cool. Anyway, on with the description of the book. Olivia Basente was never supposed to have the gift. The ability to commune with the dead was the specialty of her sister, Nash. But when Nash dies unexpectedly under strange circumstances, somehow Olivia can't stop seeing and hearing from spirits. A few years later, she's the most in-demand paranormal investigator in Denver. She's good at her job, but the loss of Nash haunts her, and when she hears from the Browns Palace, a landmark Denver hotel, the owner can't explain it, but every few years, a girl is found dead in room 904, no matter what room she checked into the night before. As Olivia tries to understand these disturbing deaths, the past and present collide as Olivia's investigation forces her to confront a mysterious and possibly dangerous cult, a vindictive journalist, betrayal by her friends, and shocking revelations about her sister's secret life. So like Twin Peaks Denver style. I don't know. I'm interested in that. There's a lot of like journalist and writer type stories, and I know a lot of writers and journalists who also write fiction. I'm living proof of that. Write what they know, and this is what they know. So I know a lot of like author stories get told in fiction books. I just think it's neat when there's a lot of them. All of a sudden, I've just noticed that. Coming up March 18th, there is a re-release of The Vampire Tapestry by Susie McKee Charnas. The cover is red on red. It's blood cells with red and white text on a black parallelogram in the center. It's really boring, just like the actual book. I found it extremely boring, but this is the best cover that I've ever seen for The Vampire Tapestry. I should give it a go again someday when I have nothing left to read. Gestures broadly. Tor Essentials presents new editions of science fiction and fantasy titles of proven merit and lasting value, each volume introduced by an appropriate literary figure. The Nebula Award-winning finalist and reinvention of the vampire novel, described as a masterpiece by Guillermo del Toro. I forget who wrote the actual intro to this. Edward Wayland is far from your average vampire. Not only is he a respected anthropology professor, but his condition is biological rather than supernatural. He lives discrete lifetimes bounded by decades of hibernation and steals blood from labs rather than committing murder. Wayland is a monster who must form an uneasy empathy with his prey in order to survive. Have you read it? If you've read it, let me know. If you've read it and you love it, let me know. I'm very interested in those who've loved it. Like I said, I should revisit it someday. I just didn't. I found it extremely boring. And I like The Historian, and that's a real thick book that some could find boring. But yeah, I'll have to try it again someday. Or skip that and read this, White Line Fever by K.C. Jones, out March 18th. Hot pink skies over a strip of wet highway heading into forever with black pine forests on each side. Glowing white hot Helvetica. Impressive and tense looking already. The eponymous white line beckons. I had to get artsy with that because this cover, like what is going on with this cover? The colors are intense for some reason. Those black pines scare me. I don't know where we're going. I understand what white line fever is. I've had this problem before. In a blizzard, even worse. At a passing glance, County Road 951 is an entirely unremarkable stretch of blacktop, two-line scar across the Cascade foothills of Central Oregon. But the road is known by another name, coined by locals who've had to clean up after all those scenic detours that went horribly wrong. The Devil's Driveway. When Livia and her longtime friends take the driveway as a shortcut to a much-needed weekend getaway, what begins as a morning joyride quickly becomes anything but. Soon they're driving for their lives, pursued by a horror beyond anything that they've ever imagined. The Devil's Driveway may only be 15 kilometers long, but with danger at every turn, it will take four women to the very limits of their friendships and their sanity. I find it interesting that I said kilometers, but it clearly says miles. Just Canada brain, you know. March 25th. We're getting close to the end of this giant list of books, all amazing covers. Empty Devils by Chris DeLeo, and this has red corroded serif text on a black and white image of a graveyard featuring a pile of dirt and a shovel stuck in it. Really simple, extremely effective. With his daughter in a casket and his wife in a cult, David Eden is on the brink of losing touch with reality. So when he begins conversing with his daughter's ghost and then encounters a nightmare monster in the cemetery that can't possibly be real, but it most certainly decidedly is, he's convinced that he's lost it. But David is also out to get vengeance on the white supremacists he blames for his child's death, and he's about to learn that sometimes it takes a monster to defeat one. I am so intrigued by the premise of this. It's going to be a deal with the devil story, isn't it? But yeah, very intriguing. Every Dark Cloud by Marissa Pachette, and this comes out March 25th as well. A very impressionistic, cool-looking pastel cover of a woman standing on the edge of a forest, facing the camera. Wild and fantastical mushrooms growing up in the foreground, while a polluted orange cloud rolls in behind her. It's got this clash of orange and blue. It's kind of like a visible miasma. It feels ill to look at. White text. It looks really great. Living in a post-climate disaster world protected by a layer of an artificial cloud, Mallory knows every shade of darkness, their world lit sparingly by bioluminescence. But when rain stumbles across their path, radioactive light bleeding from their teeth, their skin twisted and burned, Mallory's worldview implodes, and the true cost of their survival becomes all too clear. It's a haunting cli-fi. So climate horror, science fiction, cli-fi. Never heard that term before. I usually cut out the this book will give you chills kind of stuff, but I kept this in because I was interested to hear if other people have used or heard the term cli-fi for climate horror, science fiction. Cli-fi. A haunting cli-fi novella, ideal for fans of Tiffany Morris and Stephanie Feldman. Every Dark Cloud combines dystopian setting and class-conscious narrative with a glimmer of hope in our shared humanity. I don't know who those two other authors are, but I like the sounds of this book. Also on March 25th, we have Gothic Town by Emily Carpenter. It's a duotone red on black, a lot of red on black this time around. This features dried rose stems and thorns in a fittingly gothic black letter font for the title in stark white. I like the thorns, and we revisit thorns in a bit. The email that lands on Billy Hope's inbox seems to be like a gift from the universe. For $100, she can purchase a spacious Victorian home in Juliana, Georgia, a small town eager to boost its economy in the wake of the pandemic. That is not unheard of. There are towns that do sell homes for $100. It's very true. Northern Ontario, there's towns that you can move to for like $100. Swear to God. So now she can leave behind her cramped New York City rental and the painful memories of shuttering her once thriving restaurant and start over with her husband and daughter. Plus, she'll get a business grant to open a new restaurant in a charming Riverside community laden with opportunity. It seems like a dream come true or the devil's bargain. I hope it's a cult story. It's gotta be cults. Hopefully it could be a haunting. It's a Victorian mansion after all. Also on March 25th, we have Nameless Things by Ernest Jensen. Black on red with Helvetica all caps text, very plain. The trees are in the shape of a skull, which is quite a feat using what looks like jack pine trees. But it's got like a foreground, background thing, so you can see there would probably be a river or a path through the mist that these trees are photographed in, creating the look of the eye holes of the skull. And yeah, it's very interesting to look at. I've seen a lot of like forests that look like skulls kind of books in the past couple years, and it's just neat how they do it every time. In the aftermath of a painful breakup, Mike and his friend Wade seek solace in the remote beauty of Devil's Cup State Park, Colorado. Their quest for peace is abruptly ended when a meteor strike causes a rock to fall, trapping them in their diverse group of campers within the ancient volcanic caldera. As they grapple with their new reality, I'm just stumbling over the fact that they had to point out that it's a diverse group. I certainly hope it's a diverse group, but it's just weird. Like, I'd hate to be labeled as like, hey, that diverse group came through here the other day. They were looking mighty diverse. I remember proofreading someone's story once in a group, and someone described as a feminist kick to the chin, and I'm like, what is a feminist kick? Anyway, the sanctuary that they sought becomes a hunting ground as the group discovers the ground is infected with lethal flesh-piercing worms. The situation turns dire when they realize these predators are merely the heralds of something far more terrifying, the nameless things. With no way to call for help, survival hinges on their ability to outsmart the unseen terror lurking beneath their feet. I think that this might be cli-fi. I think this looks cool. It looks neat. I like the cover quite a lot. And I like those sort of climate horror, for lack of a better term. Better term maybe being cli-fi. But it's the sci-fi angle that's not here, I don't think. But hey, it's like the Runes. If you enjoyed the Runes, I think you might like that. Wrecked by Alex Gonzalez, also out March 25th. This has kind of like a cyberpunk looking, cool looking cover with teals and blues and cyans and blacks on little fuchsia highlights to offset that. This face is bisected with digital lines, and there's like little smaller images. It reminds me a lot of the cover or the back of the VHS box for Hardware, if you remember that film. Yeah, so I hope it's a cyberpunk. At one time, Sammy thought he knew how the world worked. The ugly things in his head, his uncle's pathetic death, his parents' mistrust, the twisted horrors he writes for the internet didn't matter, because he and his girl Ellery were on track for the good life in this messed up world. Then a car accident changed everything. Spiraling with grief and guilt, Sammy scrambles for distraction. He finds it in shock videos of gore and violence that terrified him as a child. When somebody messages him on the dark web with a link to a video of Ellery dying, he watches first the car crash that killed her, then hundreds of other deaths, even for people who are still alive. Accidents, diseases, suicides, murders. The host site, Chinsky, is sadistic, vicious, impossible, and it even seems to read his mind, manipulate his searches. But is Chinsky even real? This description reminds me quite a bit of the book Scanlines by Todd Kiesling, which I enjoyed quite a lot. It's a novella, very dark, very, very dark, as this promises to be as well. And then we jump to April 1st for The Thorns by Don Kurtagich. And I am talking about this one because the cover features rose thorns, much like a previous book we talked about. I'm not a fan of the yellow text this time around. You remember last month in February when we talked about books coming out, there was a lot of yellow text. But I do love the braided hair with rose thorns coming out of it. It looks like a physically concocted editorial photo, and I don't know if it's digital or not, but it's so well done. It looks so cool. So kudos to this author. Touch a line, you break your spine. Stacy is the dusty air, the cracked soil, the drought to 13-year-old Bethany Sloan. She's everything. Abandoned by her mother at a remote African boarding school, Bethany will do anything to stay in Stacy's good graces, and that means learning the rules of each twisted game. Touch a crack, you break your back. Years later, Bethany is a best-selling author. Disabled now, she can't remember what happened back in the bush. Now there's no mistaking Stacy Preston's name in her inbox. Glassy, glassy, cut my arse. That email brings Bethany's childhood rushing back. The Glass Man was just a story that the Thorns invented, a game of wits, but every game has its rules and consequences for breaking them. To stay alive this round, Bethany needs to play right into Stacy's hands. I sort of get what's going on here. I was thrown off by the glassy, glassy, cut my arse. Okay. I mean, I guess that's creepy. The touch a crack and break your back could be sinister. Touch a line and break your spine. Glassy, glassy, cut my assy would rhyme better, but still, anyhow. Interesting cover. Love this cover. I'll talk about this book again in April when we come back with books coming out in that month as well. But yeah, these are a lot of really cool books for March. If there's anything here that you've already read, let me know. Or if I've enticed you to pick up more books and add them to your piles as well, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and have an spooky day.